Hi, I'm Tristan from Infinity, and I'm joined by Declan and Duncan.
Hello. Hi there.
And today we're going to talk about how we can use Dynamics 365 to support the entire end-to-end journey within an organisation, so right from marketing through to finance. So Dynamics 365 is a platform that offers capability across all departments within a business. So we're going to kind of walk through them logically today. So we'll start with marketing, move on to sales, fulfilment, customer service, etc. So if we start with marketing, I guess, Declan, the most important thing is who you're marketing to. How do you define your audience?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's always the first step. So defining our audience, building our segment. How do we do that in Dynamics? I suppose Dynamics lets us access the underlying attributes of our contacts, our accounts that we want to market to. So whether we want to market to people in a particular location, or people who have bought something from us before, or just expressed a general interest in doing business with us, we can bring those attributes into our segment and create a dynamic segment that we can then use to market to.
Yeah, and I guess the real USP there is that we've got all of our data in one place underneath that, right? So we can look at people's order history or their preferences or their location, all that stuff, whether it's from finance data or CRM data or service data. We've effectively got all of that in one place, right? And we can also use Copilot to help define those segments.
Yes, so use natural language to define our segments. So rather than having to sort of drag in the attributes or drag the attributes across from the right-hand side, I can just type in contacts who live in London, and it'll dynamically bring that segment together, bring those attributes together, and do it for me. And that's getting more and more intelligent as we go, and building more and more complex segments that you can then manually tweak if you want to. But yeah, it just gives you a great starting point and saves time, really.
Yeah, cool. And then once we've defined our audience, we're going to need some content to share with them, right?
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. So I suppose different types of content we can share, emails being probably the most common one, but SMS messages, WhatsApp, forms that we might put in emails or embed into our website that we can ask people to fill in to sort of drive lead generation, drive interest. Different forms of content.
Yeah, nice. And so we've got our target audience now from our segment. We've got some content to share with them, and maybe a form that we want them to land on. How do we bring all that together?
So put it together in what we call a journey. So it's a marketing campaign essentially, but our terminology is a journey. We build journeys. At the top we have our segment, so who it is we want to market to, what we've built, and then we start building out. We bring different bits of content together in a kind of an automated workflow way. So step one might be to send them an email. Step two might be to see if they interact with that email, see if they fill a form in that was on the email. If they do, send them down sort of one path on the journey. If they don't, send them down the other. So maybe send them another email, or do some sort of A/B testing to send them different versions of emails or text messages to see what hits best. We automate that journey based on how the customer or potential customer interacts with the collateral that we're sending them.
Yeah. I think the other interesting thing about those journeys is we can start it from an audience, so that can be dynamic. So as someone fits the criteria, they start the journey, or we can do it based on an event as well. Can't we? So I've seen examples where someone goes into a shop and joins the Wi-Fi. You can then have some code in that process that triggers an event in the marketing platform, and you go through the journey that way as well. And I guess what we want in terms of an outcome for that is, we can define different goals for it, but normally we're looking to generate leads.
Yeah, that's the sort of number one goal.
As people interact with that journey, but also with us as a business, so they're going on the website or they're opening emails, that kind of thing. We can use all of that insight to score the lead, can't we? So we know which ones we want to work on and prioritize, and maybe which ones are ready to hand off to a sales team.
Yeah, I suppose there's loads of sort of factors that influence that lead score that we can kind of set up. So if say 0 to 100, we want to score our leads, those that score at 80 or above, because they've given us multiple indications that they're ready to buy, or maybe not even ready to buy, but ready to be engaged by our sales team. We can score them 80 plus, so high, and they get passed over to our sales team. Those that maybe fall below 80 might fall into a bit more of a nurturing by marketing process. Lead scoring allows us to do that.
Yeah, and once that qualification process has happened, so it's handed off to the sales team, again, a benefit of that single platform approach is that sales can see all of the activity that's come before, so they can see why the lead is scored in a certain way, how they've interacted with us, what pages on the website they've looked at, all of that great data, right? So there's no integration there, that just flows through.
It's all there out the box. I love it because you can see if a lead has come off the back of an event as well, you can see what the originating event was, which is really useful. And then you get into things like, well, how can we use that to measure the ROI of the event that we held, or the ROI of our wider marketing activity, because the data's there, and it's just about how we interpret it, and then what we do with that analysis to improve what we do moving forward, or improve the handoff from marketing to sales.
Yeah. And based on the fact that lots of activity might have happened up to that point, so phone calls, emails, tasks, that kind of thing, one of the great features is the ability to summarize that timeline, isn't it? So we can use Copilot to summarize all of the activity that's happened and give us a kind of digestible recap of where we're at. So again, from a sales perspective, we can see what's happened and we know how to move on. And then managing that sales process, if we want to, depends how the team's structured, doesn't it? We've got this idea of sequences to tell us what happens next.
Yeah, so I guess marketing hand that lead over to sales jump in, that salesperson, like you say, uses Copilot potentially to summarize that opportunity or that lead, and then a sequence potentially gets attached to that lead, and the sequence there is to kind of guide the salesperson through what the next best action is. So depending on the lead that's come across, there might be a sequence with 5 steps. Step one is give them a call, see if they pick up, have a conversation with them. If they don't, wait 2 days, give them another call. If they don't pick up, send them an email. But if they do pick up, do something else. So it's kind of guiding salespeople through a process. Depends on your sales process if it's if it's useful for you. I love it for kind of high volume type sales stuff where you've got salespeople and they're almost going through lead, 100 leads a day potentially. So it just gives them a bit of structure, and as a business allows us to enforce some level of, I suppose, governance or process on what people are doing.
Yeah, and in terms of how salespeople work as well, the interface is quite nice, isn't it? You've got that kind of inbox view of what do I need to do next? What's the next action for this particular opportunity or lead? It's a nice way of managing work. So even outside of a really kind of rigid sales process, those salespeople can still kind of feed their own inbox and say, right, this is what I need to do this week, next week, whatever. Yeah. And then from an inbound perspective, I suppose we've got Copilot for sales and what that allows us to do in terms of tracking inbound emails and responding and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big improvements over the last 18 months as well, because it was kind of always this ability to bring your emails across from Outlook into Dynamics, but it was pretty basic functionality. It was kind of track this email into Dynamics. But now with the introduction of Sales for Copilot for Sales, while we can track that email and track that conversation within Outlook, we can also see details from Dynamics without having to jump into Dynamics. If I get an email from Alex Baker, I can see who Alex works for. I can see the opportunities Alex is associated with. I can update those details from Outlook as well. I can start creating team sites to collaborate with colleagues. Just the level of integration over the last 18 months since the push with Copilot has just kind of upgraded what I can do.
Yeah, good. And then that activity, so that email activity plus those phone calls and those appointments, that's all driving then an AI model to score opportunities as well. So our lead scores handed off to sales, we can then score opportunities to see which ones we're going to work on, and other things like relationship analytics as well. So all of that activity data is driving that.
Yeah. So again, just more information that's just there out of the box, right? It just works. There's no integration with anything else. It's just there. So we get all our analytics from marketing. We get analytics from, if Duncan sent them an email, I can see the email that Duncan sent them, or if you've had a call with them, I can see that, and I can see how much time I've invested versus how much they've invested in responding to me. So just more data that allows me to do just some really nice stuff, really.
Yeah, and the more activity data that's in there, the more accurate those kind of analytics and scoring are going to be. So reducing that barrier to entry to get there in there in the first place is really important, right? Yeah. And also then using the kind of sentiment in those communications to drive and inform that score as well is important. Another really useful thing as well is the ability to go and look at a previous phone call and see a transcript and notes and things.
Yeah. If you want to enable that, some people might not like it, but going in and seeing the transcript, previous conversations that were had, summaries of those conversations as well. Just quite often big deals. There's lots of people working on big deals. Lots of people are having conversations with customers, and you can't always make every call, right? So being able to jump in and see what conversations were had from maybe a call that you couldn't make is just really useful, and something that a few years ago, it would have been another conversation I would have had to have with you just to catch up, really.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and then I guess the next logical step in terms of the process is starting to specify what it is we're going to deliver in terms of products and services. So using the product catalog to add that stuff, and there's some features in there to help as well.
Yeah, there's some nice features. So yeah, you set your product catalog up, you have all your products, but then you can get suggestions on, okay, well you've selected this product, maybe you want to consider adding this product because it's something that often goes with product A. Yeah, so just some really nice tools in there.
Yeah, so you've got upsells, cross-sells,
Yep.
recommendations, it's all useful stuff. And then from there, I guess we're looking to create a proposal type document that we're going to share with the customer and create a quote.
Yeah, send our quote out. We can have different quote revisions. So, if we share one quote with the customer and we lock that in, but then the customer comes back to us and say, can we tweak this? Then really easy to do. We just create another revised version of it, and the original gets saved. We can see what went to the customer originally, but we can now see and compare it with any revisions that have gone out. We can PDF that, different templates for PDFing. So just making sure your quotes go out with your brand details on it. It's minor, but really, really important, right, to protect your brand. So lots of flexibility around that and sharing them out just from within the system. You don't have to download it and attach it to an email. You can just do it within Dynamics.
Yeah. And I think from the proposal creation process is where the modern work integration really comes into its own, isn't it? So it can have multiple people working on a Word document or a PowerPoint presentation or whatever.
You can share it and store it within SharePoint. So we store it within SharePoint, and different people can access it. You've got your Teams integration throughout Dynamics wherever you are, but really useful for here because if I make some tweaks, I want to let you know that I've made some tweaks, and then you can jump in and we can work collaboratively on pulling that quote or that collateral together.
Yeah, that idea of connected chats is really powerful, isn't it? So you can contain the conversation related to that record rather than
let's us have a conversation about this quote, and I suppose it doesn't show all the memes that we obviously send each other all day every day. So it blocks out all that noise and lets us focus on, right, here's a chat just about this quote.
Yeah. And then some stuff that might be happening in the background at that point is maybe an approval process, isn't it? So if we're looking at margins on a quote, that kind of thing, what tools have you got there?
Yeah, margins is one that comes up on probably most discovery type calls we have, in that companies want to be able to see the margin of a quote, and quite often if it's below a certain threshold, they want to kick off some sort of workflow that goes and gets approval from someone that it's below 30%, but we're happy for this to go out. We use Power Automate, the sort of workflow engine within the Power Platform suite, and the wider set of tools really easily create approval workflows that I can press a button and it sends a notification to you in Teams, for example, or sends you an email that just says, here's a link to this quote, can you go and approve it? And then there's a formal approval or approval reject option within that as well.
And again, that slots nicely into the tools we already use in terms of Teams and Outlook and that kind of stuff, doesn't it? And I guess on that point, we've got the mobile angle as well, so I guess everything we've talked about you can do on your phone, can't you?
Yeah, everything's accessible on the phone. You've got on the phone as well. Some organisations love it, some don't, but you've got the business card reader as well. So business cards are still, but they're still pretty prevalent in a lot of industries. So actually, it surprises me how often that comes up as a requirement, that people want to be able to scan business cards when they're at trade shows and different events. So again, it's just there, and you can create leads, you can create contacts off the back of just a quick scan with your phone.
Okay, so we've shared the quote with the customer. They're happy with it, obviously. What happens next?
So quote approval comes back from the customer, and then we essentially turn that quote into an order. We can get sort of digital signatures from the customer on that order, and then that kind of sets us up, that kind of completes, I suppose, the sales cycle. And the next bit is then handing that off, depending on what kind of product or service it is that has been ordered.
Yes, I think everything we talked to up to now has been fairly generic in terms of marketing and sales process. Now, depending on your industry, that order might become a project, or it might become a work order that needs to be fulfilled, or it could be some stock or something that needs to be either made or picked and shipped or whatever it might be. So yeah,
Bit of everything.
Quite
often,
all three. So this is where we then hand off to the finance side of things.
Yeah, so in Business Central, we've got bi-directional integration with those sales orders. So once that's been submitted and approved, then if, as you say, we're looking at a distribution business where there's stock that's being bought and sold, manufacturing business, that will all come in there. Obviously, there's also integration with field service if it was a service order, and projects as well. So those are different aspects. But if we're focusing on typical distribution business, then that sales order is then generated in Business Central, and we can then look at the fulfilment side of things.
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is going to generate some demand for stock.
Yeah, so you've immediately got a couple of features on the sales order where you can actually look at available and capable to promise. So that will use a load of parameters based on lead times of the supply chain. It'll look at any manufacturing time if you are manufacturing or you're kitting, so assembly orders as well. So it depends on the different product types that are there, and you can then create those. And then ultimately that, along with the parameters that are set. So obviously Declan talked earlier about the product catalogue. Often you'll drive that by creating those products within Business Central and pushing that up to the sales aspect and the marketing aspect. And around those, you can have different stock levels, replenishment levels, minimum order quantities, lead times, all of those sorts of planning parameters. Yeah. Very, very extensive. And you can make that as complex as you want. And that can feed into the demand forecasting as well. So you've got your actual demand, the sales orders that have come from sales. You've also got replenishment levels that are needed, and maybe even some forecast demand. So you can create forecasts in the system, and then you can run the planning worksheets, of which there's different types depending on the industry.
Yeah, and sorry, go on.
I suppose we can expose that to sales as well. So when sales are putting their quotes together, they can see if products are in stock. They can see if there's a lead time, and that might influence, what it is they put on their quote.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying the whole sort of Dynamics 365 end-to-end piece. I mean, it even goes back to what you were saying about marketing. If you want to look at people that have bought paint but not paintbrushes, well, that data's held within BC. That's just part of the customer insights journey that you've got in the marketing side of things. So we are seamless, although it's a different interface, it's a different look and feel. We've got that exchange of data.
Yeah. And you've got the whole purchase order process covered.
Yeah, so that's the great thing. I see clients where they're using a lot of spreadsheets and a lot of calculations to try and get there. What's really lovely about Business Central is that it will tell you suggestions. So it'll run worksheets rather than purchase orders themselves, so that the expertise of the purchasing department, the expertise of the manufacturing department, that gets factored in, and you can look at that and you can group it by different product categories, and then you can then quickly convert those to both production orders if you're in manufacturing, assembly orders if you're kitting, transfer orders if you actually are running more than one warehouse and you've got stock in one area that you need to move over here, or ultimately, as you say, a purchase order.
Yeah, and then you've got the kind of receipting, putting away, and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, again, approvals throughout the whole process. Again, we can use Power Automate now is embedded across the system, and then the purchase orders out there as the goods come in. We have an end-to-end warehouse function, and that can be as simple or as complex as the client demands. So quite happy, if you're doing things like serial number tracking or lot traceability, definitely encourage people to use handheld devices and barcodes just for accuracy and speed of processing. We can have goods coming in, so we can receipt those in. We can look at cross-stocking even. So if we've got high demand, goods come in, rather than putting them away, we can actually send them straight back out, or alternatively we can put them away. If warehouse space is of a premium, we can even use directed put away. So we can look at capacity planning in the warehouse to say, right, okay, we know we can put that away in that particular location based on the type of product it is. Does it need to be in cold storage? Does it need to be in a dry area? Does it need to be on the lower levels because it's bulky? And then within that warehouse, you've got all of the concepts that you would expect around pick faces, bulk replenishment, and stock checking and all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, and throughout all of those processes that you mentioned there, similar to the customer facing side of things, you've got Teams integration within the package as well. So you've got sales chasing you, when's the due date on this order? You can
Absolutely. So you can literally share that sales order. You can actually share the data across both. Within Teams, you've got full access to all of the BC data anyway. You don't even need to be licensed, actually, to read that information. And also, as its core, every single transaction that's got these movements is tied in with the accounting side of things. So when we talk about margins on a quote earlier, well, we can drive the cost and the pricing from within Business Central if that's appropriate, so that we can make sure that the accountants are in control of that costing rather than anyone else. And once you get to the goods coming into the warehouse, when they're moving around, there's something called landed cost that can also be factored in, so you can actually value your stock based on the cost of bringing them to the current location and condition.
Okay, so carrying on that customer journey, then we've shipped something out to the customer. Let's say something's missing when it arrives. How might they get in touch with us, and what happens next?
So Microsoft want to make it as easy as possible, really. So loads of different options. Customers can give us a call, they can send us an email, send us a text message, WhatsApp, live chat through the website. You've got interaction with different bots. So again, if it's through the website or it's over the telephone, you can start by interacting with a bot, telling them what your problem is, and 9 out of 10 times you might get a resolution via the bot. But if you want to transfer to an agent and speak to someone live, then you can do that as well.
Yeah, I guess from a business case standpoint, it's about shifting to the more efficient channels, isn't it? Lower cost to serve the customer, but also giving them the option to interact in the way that they want to as well.
Yeah.
And from a agent experience perspective, it's really nice because that all comes into the same interface, doesn't it? And there's some tools in there to help move faster as well, like summarising the chat.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter which channel of communication the customer picks. It all comes into one interface within Dynamics. So you don't have to jump into an interface for voice or an interface for WhatsApp or live chat. All comes into one place. When that call does get transferred, or the live chat gets transferred, you can see a transcription on the left hand side of the conversation that the bot has had with the customer. You can use Copilot to quickly summarize that. So if it's been a long conversation, or the customer's gone through multiple choice question and answers, then Copilot will summarize that conversation within sort of 3 or 4 bullet points. Tell you why they're giving you a call, tell you what the main issues are, tell them why they've been transferred if it was a request or the bot couldn't deal with it, which just speeds up the productivity. Nothing worse than getting transferred and then your agent goes, right, give me 30 seconds, I just need to read the conversation you just had with the bot. The agent just knows straight off the bat what the problem is and can jump into helping.
Yeah, and there's loads of contact center tools, isn't there? Like consulting and transferring and routing and all that stuff, and swarming and
sentiment analysis. So one of my favorites is you've got ongoing live sentiment analysis of the conversation, and that includes right from the moment they get transferred, so you can see if they were having a negative conversation with the IVR, for example, and then that continues as the agent talks to them, and you can set up some really nice features and flags. So if that sentiment analysis drops below a certain level, maybe from slightly negative to very negative, then it will alert a supervisor or a team leader, for example, and that supervisor or team leader, they can start monitoring the conversation in real time. They can maybe open up a sort of a consult on the side with the agents, give them some advice, and if things get really bad, they can actually jump into the conversation, and it becomes a 3-way conversation between the customer, the agent, and the supervisor, just to make sure the customer gets a satisfactory response.
Okay, so we're interacting with the customer and potentially with internal teams as well. So managing knowledge, I guess, in that context is really important as well.
Yeah, I think it's the idea is to put as much information within arm's reach for the agent. So knowledge management's a great example, right? If you're having a conversation with a customer about a missing item, then there might be a knowledge article on how to resolve that, or a common issue that it's not actually missing. It's it's in the packaging, but it's really small and it's wrapped up, and it's a common mistake. Just being able to give access to information to agents while they're on the telephone is really important. And of course, you can use Copilot to kind of surface those knowledge articles as well. So I can ask Copilot a specific question, and it might go away and get me an answer, pulling out the relevant text from a knowledge article. Yeah.
And if we've got all that knowledge in place as well, then we can serve that to the customer via a portal, can't we? And prevent that interaction in the first place.
Yeah. So shifting towards lower costs of serving customers.
Yeah. And then hopefully, moving through that process, we're going to get to the point of resolving that case. So we can go through that process again from a contact center perspective. We've got things like wrap up time and managing my status, as I'm available again for the next call, all of that good stuff.
Yep.
So post that case, then we're going to want to get some feedback typically. So how do we get that from a customer?
Yeah, so we've got automatic sort of post conversation surveys that we can send out. We've got pre-conversation surveys as well, worth mentioning. But yeah, post conversation surveys that automatically go out to customers. Once cases have been resolved or once conversations have been completed. They don't have to go out to every customer. It can go to 1 in 10 or 1 in 20 of a particular case type. It's completely flexible, but it's all out the box integration with customer voice. That again, no additional licensing. It's just wrapped into the standard Dynamics 365 licensing, and really easy to do.
Yeah, good. And then I guess there's a layer that wraps around all of that in terms of analytics, isn't there? So what kind of intelligence can we get out of the platform?
Yeah, again, loads of out-of-the-box intelligence, so different reports, whether it's looking at historical cases or preferred channels or analytics around what's happening in the moment, so real-time omnichannel analytics, how many calls are going on, how many live chats are going on, and then you can use all of that to kind of summarize, well, what were the most successful channels of communication, and maybe what channels were preferred by our customers and what channels led to more successful outcomes, and we can start pushing some of those channels. So again, loads of data, loads of insight. Microsoft make it really easy for you to view it and interpret it, and then I guess it's the emphasis is on you to make changes based on what you're seeing.
And coming back to that point, that's the kind of strand through the whole thing, I guess, around that single data store. Those agents have got access to financial information about that customer as well, so they can see things like previous orders, outstanding balance, that kind of thing. So just handing back into the finance world, how might we kind of chase an outstanding balance, for example?
Yeah, they can see posted invoices that are all there. They can see the history, and whilst there's certain fields that are available, obviously all the data's there. And also, if we go back to the scenario where there's a missing part, then we can have that screen actually create that order and actually create the dispatch instruction through the warehouse to actually send that product out free of charge or with a charge if needed, if it was a broken part.
Yeah, and then carrying on that finance journey, then at some point you're going to receive some cash in, and
hopefully, that's it. So again, you have really useful credit control information, age debt, with the ability to use reminders and follow-up letters, credit limits. We can do integrations with things like credit agencies, and then yes, you receive the cash in. You obviously got full end-to-end bank integration, so you can manage all of that. You can now use Copilot to do laborious tasks like bank reconciliations, which is just the bane of every accountant's lives.
Some clever stuff
ticking
in
and
there,
bashing, as we used to say, and ultimately you've got really tight financial controls across the whole aspect of this. So again, when you start bringing in purchasing for events, so we talked about events right at the beginning of the conversation, well, you can have that create a tracking dimension code so that we can actually look at profit and loss by event all the way back from that piece, and actually if we wanted to, we can track those orders as well, so we can see whether those events are successful or not, which is really about building the business case, so where you're spending that limited marketing budget.
Okay, and you mentioned kind of P&L by dimension there,
Yeah.
so that ability to view a P&L report.
What's really nice again in Business Central is that you're not having to have standard reports written for you or complex reports you have to dump out. And whilst Excel's still got its place and you can export everything to Excel, you can edit in Excel, there's still a whole load of interrogation that people can use within the system. So by applying filters, by applying analysis views and using Copilot to give me my monthly balances by customer group on this particular sales account, all of that sort of stuff makes it easier for the user to interrogate the data. And now we've got real-time chat based as a Copilot agent to go in and ask questions of the data. Top 3 invoices for this customer last year. Have they been paid? How do I close my year end out as well? So it's got some really good training stuff, and it'll give you instructions on how to do that, but also give you the link to the further training from Microsoft, which is all online anyway.
Yeah. And one of the big pains we see across businesses, but particularly in finance, is you've got the idea month end happens, that goes into a report, that goes into a board pack, and by the time the board meetings happen, you're talking about data that's 2 months old, right? So some of that forecasting capability in there, and being able to look forward is really important.
It is, and it's about real-time decisions. So, I'm a big fan of advocating getting rid of those static board packs that have been prepared that are looking at 6 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago even. The decisions have been made. We want real-time information. So something like Power BI that's taking real-time data, and you need to take it in context, and you need to make sure all of the transactions are through, all the accruals, prepayments, cash reconciliations, all the accounting functions are there. But then much more interactive, that ability to drill down to say, are we spending our money in the right way? Are we spending it on the right marketing activity? Are we selling the right products at the right margins? All of those really business led decisions that we need to take. Yeah. And of course, it still has full compliance with all the core accounting requirements, IFRS 15 and around revenue recognition for subscriptions, which is definitely something that we as an industry understand. But everything's becoming as of service is a subscription. So there are accounting standards, and of course Microsoft have absolutely embedded that into their product to make it easy for users to do that.
Yeah. And I think that agility is really important as well, isn't it? So you're not making decisions based on something that's gone wrong in the past. You can actually find a problem and correct it as you go.
It's speed of reporting that's really key. So you can't be spending a lot of time trying to create these reports. You want to be able to get to the reports and spend the time analysing them to make the right business decisions. Yeah.
So all of this is creating more data, right? So we've got our marketing data, we've got our sales data, we've got our financial information. So kind of handing back to the CRM world, having a 360 view with all of that included is really important for account management and nurturing those customer relationships.
Yeah, definitely. I think 360 customer view is one of those terms that gets bounded around, but you really do get it with Dynamics, and it comes back to having that single source of data, being able to access everything about your customer, that 360 view of your customer in one place. So you can see orders, you can see work orders, you can see projects, opportunities, everything. You can then see personal information about the customer as well. So you've got that out of the box LinkedIn Sales Navigator integration, both being Microsoft products, as you've got, it's just there and out of the box. You can do things like setting up organization charts. So we can map out how different contacts within accounts are associated with one another. We store key details, who's an influencer, who's a blocker on our deals.
And again, similar to opportunities, you've got that relationship analytics piece at customer level as well, so you can monitor how that ongoing relationship looks, and again use that kind of sales accelerator sequence piece to make sure you're staying in touch at the right time and at the right frequency. And then going back to that kind of platform approach, I guess, and pulling the whole thing together from end to end, it's then about the reporting that you can give to leadership within the business, isn't it? So I can, in a single platform from a single data set, look at, all right, what does my lead trend look like? How does that translate to pipeline? How does that translate to sales, to cash, to kind of account relationships and things, all from one place? I mean, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and it's how you make the big decisions, right? You need to be able to see that information. You need the visibility of the data to decide, how do we move the business forward? Where do we need to put our resources as we go through the next sort of few months? And that's going to drive things like recruitment and loads of other activity.
Yeah, and by taking away all of the maintenance and administration and development by using a platform to handle all of this, that frees up your time to focus on solving problems and moving the business forward.
It definitely does. I mean, you change the way you think in terms of it being a seamless process. So creation of a customer, each customer will be each client will be different in how they create their customers, whether that's from the lead at the front end, whether they then need to actually have an input from the finance team to look at credit limits, to look at VAT status, all of that sort of information.
Or if it's e-commerce, it might,
And e-commerce, exactly. But it's a single version of the truth that's all seamlessly linked together, so that it doesn't matter what your role is in the organization, you can see that data and you can influence that data, and you move away from any manual processes, keying in data, managing things, copying things from spreadsheets, all of that really
managing
thankless,
expensive integrations.
Exactly. And now you're moving to actually using your brain for something more engaging. I always come down to the employees in your organization. They will have a better work day. They'll have a more enjoyable and interactive work day. They'll have more fulfillment out of their job, and they're more likely to stay in their role if they're with someone who's got this forward-thinking approach rather than just thankless tasks where they're, doing manual processes.
Yeah, really good. Thank you, Duncan. Thank you, Declan. Thank you.